guys, my name is Nairi and welcome to my adoption support channel where I share tips and advice about adoption and I share my adoption stories. So if you think that could be useful to you, then please take the time to subscribe if you would like to. And today I'm going to talk about a little mini interview or conversation I had with my adopted boys on the back of a question that I had from my dear YouTuber friend asking me if I felt the boys had abandonment issues. So rather than ask them that, I decided to ask them some open-ended questions about adoption, and I wrote down verbatim what they had to say. So if you think you will find that interesting, then stick around and hear what both of my sons, who are now 10 and 11, had to say about adoption, bearing in mind that we've had them from 2 and 3 when they were foster boys and we adopted them a few years ago. So the first thing that I asked one of my sons was, what are the worst things about adoption? And to be fair, he had no short of answers for this. And I also found this with my other son, that they were more prepared to tell me the things they struggled with than the things that were good. So I take from that, that I had quite close to the truth of how they felt about adoption. So the first thing he said was, I don't know where we are going or what we are doing. And I think that really relates back to when they had the uncertainty when they were fostered and then they went into adoption, and how they felt about not knowing what the future held. And I guess that shows with all adopted children that they've come across lots of uncertainty about what their future holds, and that for us as adults we understand the difference between a birth family, a foster family and an adoptive family, but for many children they don't get those fine lines of crossing over and understand. For them, every family is a family, and for them they've had many moves and much uncertainty. So I felt that demonstrated with my boys, that there has been a huge level of uncertainty in their lives. And for our boys as well, they also had a failed adoption before we finally took them on as an adoptive family. So they have that uncertainty in the mix also. The other thing he said to me is, there's always a lot of rushing around. Now, I hope that's not a reflection on our family, because we do have a large family. The boys are 2 of 7 because I have 5 birth children. But there is a lot of rushing around sometimes in a new adoptive family, and there can be a lot of meetings. There can also be contact with birth family. There's lots of change, and therefore there's lots of transientness and rushing around. The next thing he said was, you don't know where your parents have gone. And I think this is reflecting on the worry around where his birth family actually are, who they are, where they are, whether they're alive, where they live, and whether they're coming back. And you'll know from my other adoption story videos that our boys are always worried about being taken away from us because of the fact that they have already been adopted out once. So they have a fear of not being with us. But it seems to me that there's a lot of curiosity there around what their actual birth parents are doing, and potentially actually how they are. So even though the boys were 2 and 3 and they don't really remember an awful lot about their birth family, there is that curiosity about where their parents are. And I think that's something that we're going to have to address later as the boys get older, and keep coming back to them and double checking whether they would like to seek out and have some sort of contact with their birth parents. Because as I said in my birth contact video that's already on the channel, curiosity plays a huge part for children in understanding their history. And whilst we acknowledge that there are risks involved in opening out contact with the birth family for our particular story, it still might be necessary to do that to help with that curiosity. The next thing that he said was, you might think that you should be with your old parents in the beginning. So this really shows him trying to figure out his identity. Whereas those of us who have adopted, that feel that we've adopted for the better for our family, for our children, there is a question mark, it seems, in my son's mind about whether it's actually right that he's not with his old parents. Even though he knows that they weren't able to look after him, he's questioning his sense of identity and his sense of belonging. What you might feel in the beginning, you need to be with your old parents, and that's verbatim what he said. Now, in the beginning, they were fostered, of course, and so there may have been a lot more of a transient feeling around their home. But I think the fact that he's only just said to me in the last few months shows that he's still questioning adoption in its entirety. And this is what happens with adoptees when they're older, and they want to find out their roots. They want to understand their history and their identity, and rightly so. And so again, that's an open-ended conversation that I think we will need to keep open with both of our boys, that they may need to seek out those parents. Something that my other son said, James, who is not as vocal in his opinions and often doesn't share his feelings, and this is something that I felt was profoundly interesting, even though he didn't say much to me. He said, feel more scared because you're not living in a proper family. Now, whether that related to us when we were fostering or whether that relates to now, I don't know. But he said, when we first came, you will never be our birth family. So that again, there's a sense of identity crisis, that we're not his proper family. And what he means by that was he wasn't born to me. And so that makes it different from a proper family. And so I think we have a lot of work there to do with him understanding that an adoptive family is still a proper family. It's just, it's a different family and it's not the first family. But he's honest there, isn't he, when he's saying it's not the proper family. And when he is looking at his friends at school who aren't adopted, when he's comparing his life with them, he knows, of course, that we're not his original family, and that can play on their minds. And again, this is an open-ended conversation that I think we're going to need to have with our boys. But moving on to some of the good things, and again, I got more out of my younger son. He's more chatty than I did with my older son. But I asked about the good things because I have a better family. I'm looked after better. So they do have that understanding that what was happening in their original family was not good. To a certain extent, they have that understanding. So the concept of not good enough parenting, again, is an adult concept. So for children that have been adopted quite early, they don't have a full concept of the fact that they may have been abused or not cared for properly. That's something that adults begin to explain to them and that they understand over time. I don't have to worry about being adopted when I know I wasn't in better hands. That's kind of a negative as well as a positive. I don't have to worry about being adopted when I know I wasn't in better hands, which says that if I don't know I'm in better hands, I might need to worry that I was adopted. But I think what he's trying to say there is he's working out that the reason for him being adopted, the reasons why we adopted the boys and why they couldn't stay with the family, is because they needed to be in better hands. So again, that's something that he's processing perhaps over a period of time, but something that he's beginning to understand, that the care and the love is going to be better for him. Now, I think that he's speaking in the third person here. He's gone back to another negative. Some kids may think their old parents are better than their second parents. I think those some kids might actually be him. So he's still questioning, isn't he? Actually, were they that bad? And did he need to move? He's definitely questioning that. And that's kind of a little bit heartbreaking after 8 years, but at least he's being honest with me. He's still questioning the whole reasons why he needed to be adopted. And it's really important that we keep that conversation open for him so that we can talk later about abuse in more depth so that he can get a better understanding than he actually has now. So a good thing about adoption was looking forward to having brothers and sisters. Now, we have a large family, and I would definitely say having a large family has really helped the boys. Mainly, I think, because we are older parents, and it's quite obvious in the playground that we're older parents. But by them having an adult brother and adult sisters, they can actually have a more cocooned network around them. And clearly, knowing that they were going to be adopted meant they were fully going to have brothers and sisters. My older son said it's positive because we go out more, we do more things. So again, he's trying to sort of look at what a family that cares for you might do differently from the family that doesn't care for you. So you can see, guys, that there's lots of food for thought there from my husband and I, but also for you guys that will be adopting, that it doesn't really matter how good we think we are as an adoptive family. It doesn't matter what we put in place. We've got to keep those lines of communication open for those questions that our children have, so that we can help their sense of belonging, help their sense of identity, and keep the dialogue going, so that they don't have that displaced feeling when they're older, and they don't have that need to have those answers much later. We start answering those questions for them now. I hope you enjoyed that video, much longer than I normally make, but a lot of verbatim information from my sons. If you think a channel that is going to support you through adoption, either if you've not adopted or you've already adopted, is going to be helpful, then please take the time to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And I will see you on my other videos.